you and joining us for this panel session. Antonio, Portugal is a rising hub in the tech scene, and Websummit was here in 2016 the first time. I'd be interested in learning how much impact this huge technology conference has had on the startup scene of Portugal.
It has been quite an experience because since 2016, we brought a lot of new ventures and startups to the ecosystem. It was really a way of getting to know startups world for Portuguese entrepreneurs, for Portuguese talent. Before that, we didn't have so much that importance given to all this ecosystem. And I think it was a way to give an additional stage for the country, for the Portuguese entrepreneurs, for the Portuguese talent. And it has been growing since then. Mm-hmm. So it's quite relevant, the importance that startups and entrepreneurs have nowadays in Portugal. Even with the pandemic, we are growing into the venture capital investment in startups. This year, we have raised the bar of $1 billion US dollars invested already until September in startups and entrepreneurs, doubled the value from last year. So it has been quite a journey, and I think we are super happy to have Websummit in Portugal this year in physical presence again, and hopefully until 2028 and so on, because I think the feedback that we are getting is great. So I think this is an excellent base for supporting the ecosystem.
I mean, Kat, it's fantastic to hear that there's such an impact on Portugal and Lisbon with the startup eco scene. We also have huge hubs I'm from Germany, we have Munich, we have Berlin. There's many other throughout Europe, but what does it take to really counter the massive impact that Silicon Valley has on the startup scene? And I know Texas Austin is also going towards that direction, but the US and Europe, what does it take to scale in Europe?
What does it take? Wow, well, I've got this wish list that I've actually been preparing to send Santa this Christmas. No, I don't think, it's obviously not as straightforward, but I think first and foremost, the first ingredient is really getting all of the right people to answer that question, right? And I think that's something that we can all align on. We actually, Scale Up Europe, if I could sort of maybe explain to some people in the room what it is, it's actually a pop-up think tank that was launched by Emmanuel Macron, the president of the French Republic. And the idea is to really prep the French presidency of the EU that's starting in January. It was right around the time you guys had the presidency, actually. Yeah. We got a lot of back channeling with Portugal during that time. But so bring 180 top VCs, founders, execs, corporates, but also researchers around the table to answer that exact question, both at a sort of issue definition level, but also just really tactically speaking. Tactically speaking, if we want to be pretty honest, I'm French, right? We have France is the presidency in January, and then we've got elections in France, right around the corner this spring. So we want to make sure that once we come in January, we hit the ground running. And the best way to do that is to make sure all of the right people are around the table. So, I'm not going to detail the entire report. I really invite everyone to have a look at the Scale Up Europe report, which was actually published by Sifted. But it breaks down into 4 different things. The first one is talent. My personal obsession is talent, and I really think that if it boils down to just one thing, it's going to be talent. How do we make sure that Europe has the biggest and most diverse talent pool for tech in the world? Second comes, after that comes the question of investment, which is starting to feel less and less like an issue, right? But it still is. How do we make sure we have the capital needed to back these companies? And the third one is on startup corporates. I think I don't see it. Are there any B2B founders in the room, B2B? Yeah, B2B sales cycles in Europe, horrible, right? Super long, takes forever. Why aren't these companies doing better business with European startups? Why isn't there more M&A? Why is everything feeding mostly US and China? So that's going to be a main focus of Scale Up Europe as well. And the fourth one, very close to the heart of Europe, is deep tech. we've got great research, really, really strong research, but unfortunately that's not translating as quickly as we'd like into deep tech tech champions, right? Deep tech unicorns. So those are the 4 things that Scale Up Europe will be working on.
Okay, I just want to catch up on the VC side that you said. That's one important thing. We've seen that investors from the US are moving more and more into Europe. Is that a good sign, or do we need, are they just trying to map their own thing onto Europe, or is Europe something special where we say we need to have more of our own investors, like the World Fund that was announced last week, looking into sustainability? What do you think, Antonio?
I think it's an excellent sign. I think Europe is a great source of talent. It's a great source of new ideas, of technology. We have to work on keeping this available and making easier the life for an entrepreneur and a startup. Because we have the other ingredients. We already have that. We have a great market. We have 450 million people market, bigger than the US market. And we have the ingredients. So it's obviously I think nowadays a startup and a digital-orientated company looks for the best in the world, so that the geography is not the most important issue nowadays. They want the best people to their functions, to their roles, and they look them all over the world. And Europe has a lot to give, has a lot of talent to give. So it's absolutely natural that the Americans and people from other continents come to Europe to look for that. I think we have to see what we have and make easier the life of European entrepreneurs to get that talent and to use that talent and to develop abroad and internationally. That's
That's true. I mean, I see your comment is just coming out. You want to say
No,
something, Kat? Jump in.
I mean, look, so I'm the first person to be obviously very flattered that, I know I sound American, by the way, but I'm French. First person to be flattered that all of these investors are coming and taking real interest in Europe, right? For France, not too long ago, they would come for Fashion Week. They would come to, sip rosé on the Riviera, maybe go skiing in the Alps, but certainly not for startups. Like France was considered a tech backwater for a really long time, and now they're coming in by droves, investing in startups. But maybe where I'm, I'm a little bit more conservative than Antonio. Is the question is why do we want them, right? Why do we want them? Is it because we're just lacking capital? Are these vanity metrics? If you look at the French model and the German model, which are quite different. In 2020, I believe, France's dependence on external investment for the overall total amount of funding raised, which was 5.4 billion, was only a bit above 20%, and in Germany was 70%. So when we try to attract investors, we're also trying to attract LPs, not just VCs, and we're also trying to make sure that a lot of our homegrown funds, are really making it as well. They're really making it, and they're leading rounds, and they're really contributing to the growth of the ecosystem in the best possible sort of partnership. So while I'm really excited about this, it's true that if we have some investors in the room, it's also true that everyone's terrified now of all sort of SoftBanks and Tiger Go Bills sweeping in. We're both excited about it, but we also want to be part of the discussion on what is this going to mean for European tech moving forward.
Right. I mean, you also have the collaboration between corporates and startups, which might make sense in some cases. The thing I see is, compared to the VC world, that there's not enough budget or not as much as budget than VCs can pour into a solution.
In terms of investing, or in terms of more collaboration?
Yeah. No, in terms of investing.
Everyone here maybe knows a little bit about, the European Innovation Council just set up a 10 billion fund. Index just raised a massive fund of almost $1 billion. Eurazeo just raised a massive fund of over $1 billion as well. So it's kind of a weird time where there's a lot of money that's coming in, and it's also also a time where I think the question is becoming less and less. And this is the case 2-3 years ago.
But Kate, let me just interrupt to add something. I think it's not a question if we need those investors, if you need them to come to us and to help us. I think the question is, we are open to it because it's a global world.
Oh, yeah.
So we want to make sure if they come, they have good conditions to do their work and to invest in European startups. But I think we have to do our own work to do the European entrepreneurs to also be supported by European entities and to make their life easier. So we cannot fight that absolutely normal in internationalization process because it's an open market.
I mean, I think we're aligned here. We want our European startups to win and really like whatever it'll take to, to make that happen, or we're going to push for it. But at the same time, obviously, we're also massive fans of homegrown investment and want to see European VCs also take center stage.
Yeah.
Right. So to make Europe the next hub, the tech hub of the future, do we need more unicorns? Is this the way forward, or? I mean, everybody's talking about unicorns. We need them. Your was it Prime Minister of Portugal announced the unicorn?
We just announced the 5th unicorn, so we have more than Spain and Greece and Italy together. And we're kind of being known as a unicorn country, and I'm super proud with that. But I think that's a way of catching the attention. I think that's the, let's say, a marketing way of putting things. But there are a lot of non-unicorn companies that are super valuable and that we want to support them, and we want also them to progress. And being unicorn is not itself as the final goal. And for us, Startup Portugal, we are here for them all. If you look to an article, a recent article, it talked about zebras and camels and other types of designations for companies that also have their place in the ecosystem, but are not necessarily measured only by the equity valuation that they reach of above 1 billion. So we are here for them all. I think it's great to have 5 unicorns and more, 5 or 6 to come. But it's only, I think, a reference, and we need to work with $10 million valuation company, $50 million valuation company, 100, because they are super valued, they create jobs, they make the ecosystem work, and they are really the dynamization and the energy of all the ecosystem.
Yeah, I know it was a little bit of a provocative question. I was just thinking about how startups get evaluated by VCs, and it's by KPIs. So if we're talking about being the next tech hub of the future, what will be the KPIs?
I mean, beyond KPIs, let's talk about what are unicorns for? Like, why do we even care, right? Like, Antonio and I, like, I'm a former French government official. I used to lead the French team for startups, which was called the French Tech. And my job 100% day and night was to make sure that France went from 3 to 25 unicorns in a very short period of time. When I started, there were 3, and now there are 20. Now there are 20, and it's only 2021. And I was obviously very proud of that at the very end. It's always nice to be able to sort of show these little trophies, but if you look at the top 40 companies in a country like France, one of Europe's strongest tech ecosystems, and you bring them all together, their total valuation is below that of Stripe, right? And at the end of the day, you're like, well, what are unicorns for? We have quite a few, and some of them are in the room. Like, what have they achieved now? And I think, like, for each country, this might be a little different, but for France anyway, my experience working in France, and I no longer speak for the French government, but certainly President Macron has said this multiple times. At the end of the day, we're talking about 2 things. We're talking about jobs, and not just any jobs, right? We're talking about the kind of jobs that make sure that our kids are not just using tech, but they can be part of making the decisions as to what kind of tech we're using and what future it's building. Unicorns are for that because you're talking about making sure you have that sovereignty. And the second, when it comes to the issues on sovereignty, which is always kind of like an ugly word sometimes in Europe, right? But at the end of the day, it's about making sure that we have our seat around the table. France, we missed out on the digital revolution in the 2000s. I can say that, pretty objectively, and we're still paying for it literally, including fiscally, and we just can't let that happen again.
Yeah, true. I mean, as I said, it was kind of provocative because my personal view is we should have a measure of, or a KPI of measuring the impact on society.
Yeah, social impact.
Yeah. The social
100%.
impact should be a lot higher than just, how much money they raised or whatever. So it's the impact that they have on the lives of all of us.
Yeah, but I think we are more aware of that type of criteria. So nowadays, I think that's currently a KPI that you have. You have several funds, equity funds and venture funds, investing mainly in priority in social impact companies. We have that stamp that companies want to use and want to show to the others. I think we are on that way. We are in a good path regarding that.
Right.
So diversity of KPIs, not being focused only on end results, productivity. You know. We have to be worried about also life quality, social impact, diversity, all other aspects that are important to build a healthy ecosystem. Yeah.
When you look at the startups that are in the different hubs that you have under Startup Portugal, do you see that trend reflected?
Yes, no doubt. We have we have a network of 160 incubators and accelerators all over the country. I think it's a great number. I don't know how many France has, but I think it has 200. So we are very well positioned in what relates to local knowledge and to local contact with universities, local investors, local entrepreneurs. We are seeing that new projects are much more oriented to social, much more oriented to the impact that they have in the environment, in society. I have recently given an award for a company that won the Startup of the Year prize, and it was all about environment, all about green approach to the cities. And I think it's the future, yeah.
What trends are you seeing, Kat?
Well, first of all, can I just say how happy I am that you brought up the topic, because I don't think any panel on European tech would be complete without discussing impact. I think we're all ready to root for the next generation of champions, thinking that they will represent the future of modern economy, and without the discussion on impact, I think that's very difficult to have. For me, it breaks down into two things, right? Like I know it's like, as of now, impact has been a bit of a hashtag, but if we really look into it, like into how it's being experienced by startups, at least from the inside, it breaks down into two things. It breaks down into responsibility, diversity, inclusion, and equity, sustainability, and privacy, for example, regardless of what the business of that company is, right? And then we look at actual hardcore impact, and then that's where you see all of the climate tech. That's where we see all of the health tech. And for me, that is largely a deep tech issue. That's largely research backed and a little bit about a lot on investment. But I think like if I could speak to like just every startup at Websummit today, I think the very first thing we need to focus on, without getting overexcited about just really like mostly all of the deep tech companies, is just we just have to raise the bar for everyone. I know everyone talks about tech for good, but kind of like I think we need to start with tech that doesn't break too many things too quickly, and also I think something that needs to be acknowledged, and I think there are quite a bit of founders in the room, is just how hard that is, really. Yeah. I think I did quite a bit of work with some of the French unicorns. We've been working. We were working on a standard actually that was not quite B Corp, but just something that we thought that all of the top growth stage companies could get behind. And if you want to unpack something that seems as simple, right, as diversity, like diversity should be super simple. We should have better representation of everyone. That has direct repercussions on how people hire, on their strategies at a time where they're going at like 100 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers an hour. That has repercussions on how they're going to do multicultural management. If you say have an office in New York and you have the American framework on D&I versus say like the French framework on D&I, and all of these things I think need to also be addressed at a super operational level.
I love that point of view, and I think it's a huge advantage and a huge chance that we have in Europe, that we use the diversity we have to create technology for good. I'm a total proponent of technology for good. And I think by using the different views and the different character traits and the different capabilities that people have, we can look at the solution from different sides and then decide, is the solution really having a social impact? If yes, go for it. Make it the unicorn. I'll buy the shares.
Let's get just 1 minute, because I think it's our role also as entities that work with governments, that work with public institutions, to recognize that impact. We are just starting to work towards some standardization on the concept of a startup in Europe. We still don't have that. We have to have that absolutely clear. And after that, we have to have ways of recognizing and making public that way of startups adding value to social impact, to being a tech company, to improving some areas of society, the green aspect also, where we want to work. So I think as as entities related to governments and that speak directly to governments. We have a role on that, and we should promote that type of differentiation.
Thank you so much. I couldn't be happier. Thanks for sharing the panel with me today and for the insights that you shared. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Thank you.